Hello to everybody who has joined our webinar today or maybe watching this one in the recording. This is one of the series of the regular daily webinars that Insert is running. And today we're going to be talking about the business analysis. So this is a pretty interesting domain and a pretty interesting topic as well, because technically this is the first part of the whole development process that has been started. Whatever you are working with your personal account, company and team, or maybe you're hiring some dedicated professionals. Before we get started, just a reminder that Insert is a company that for more than 30 years provides the services of transforming the financial companies into fintech unicorns. So if you want to make sure your company is up to date from the technological perspective, just start working with us. There are going to be links in the description, and we're happy to initiate any call or any communication you would like to. Anyway, talking about the business analysis itself, uh, the first thing that we have to say is that the deep dive assessment of your business processes and functions, they technically may reveal that you could do much better, even if you think that you are performing totally fine, just because they can shed some light on the aspects that you are doing possibly wrong, possibly that you can do in a little bit better way, etc. And for the financial service companies, business analysis is pretty necessary to optimize the workflow as well. But for the startups, especially the startups, it's also a chance to play it safe and make the processes, for example, save you more money. Cases usually differ, but anyway, BA and the business analysis is still a king and is still something you definitely need to improve your working expertise. And in this podcast, we're going to be talking about how we can use BA power effectively, what we can do with that. We will find out what are the key considerations performing the business analysis, how different types of fintech can benefit from it. And also, we're going to try to find some steps or some waypoints on how to do business analysis so it can work in the correct way and what to make it working specifically. Anyway, talking about the business analysis itself, what goals and objectives it provides, I'm going to start with some theory. So technically, business analysis refers to a set of tasks and technique business analysis performs to, for example, understand how the business works and maybe how the business should work instead. And thorough assessment of the company's processes and, for example, functions, they allow an expert to provide some recommendations on what can be improved, how this can be improved, how to achieve better results, and much more. And that is technically the primary goal of BA, to identify what can be done better when you are working from the business analysis perspective. Simply saying, this can be displayed in this diagram that provides you the main basic objectives of what business analysis do. So technically, it reflects on the four different aspects or the four main whales of the business analysis and the business itself. The main and the most crucial thing is to identify what are the business needs of the company. What is really something that the company needs to have and how to have it. Because technically, unless you identify these issues, you cannot suggest any changes, and obviously you cannot see any problems and forecast what can be the next steps. But except of that, except you have just identified some issues, you need to show them to your customer, because until you can solve and sell these problems, you will not be able to increase any performance, just because we will not get enough approval on how to do this, how to improve, and how to make things better. So until you show how to increase the performance by fixing or updating some related issues, you just will not be able to provide any changes at all. Another thing is, when you have shown what the things are, you need to help the business scale, and you need to help some main aspects to be identified as well. Like, how can we solve the problems that we have identified? We have identified the problems, we have shown them to the customers, but it's not enough, because customer did not know about these issues, and he may not know how to fix them as well. And to treat this in the right way, we need to identify how we gonna help the business overcome these problems at all. And this is another pretty crucial aspect. Finally, the last thing is to provide some advice on how to streamline the processes and how to make sure that these fixes will be implemented on a regular basis. Because it is not enough just to identify and show some problems and then fix them once, because Technically, any company has a cyclic way of development and growth. And when it's about cyclic way of development, you understand that you need to find some streamlined processes and that you need to update these processes in a way that they work correctly, at least. So until you can provide these advices, you cannot make the business analysis phase finalized, and you cannot make it working as the final distinguished solution. So make sure you're doing it correctly, make sure this is the correct process, and as soon as you made sure that it all works, just try to reuse that as a business analytic. And that's exactly what you need to get from your hired business analyst as well. Make sure that they will provide you the solutions that can work on a cyclic mode. Anyway, even though this seems to be an overall overview of what the things are, how they work, and why do we need them, there is also an answer to another question. Why specifically the fintech needs a business analysis? Because it seems like fintech is the company which has already improved their technological aspects. They already have some automated software, some awesome functionality, etc. And as a result, it seems like we can just skip the business analysis phase. Like all the problems have been identified, all the issues seem to be fixed. Technology works correctly. It brings customers, it brings money. Why do we need one more round of business analysis? How it's going to help us? Well, when it comes to the specific project, like for example, development of investment platform, let's say, business analysis can also help optimize the processes on both the project and organizational levels too. And by understanding how your project's goals should align with the company's goals, business analysts can help your management set the processes, identify the best ways possible, and also to reduce the time to market. And these are the main aspects that can be applied in this case. So it's not just about identifying, showing or selling, helping and providing. It is always about suggesting some updated optimization on both project and organizational levels. This is the most important part that can help you and then can lead you to identifying the best issues. Technically, in this case, skipping business analysis may lead to many crucial points missed. And when you miss some specific aspects, it may just result you in less than desired software quality. It can bring you a bad quality and speed of development. And always the software performance scalability is going to be bad. And as a result, summing up all the expenses you will get finally as the snowball growing and growing more and more, you will spend much more money than just for a session with the business analyst that's going to last for like a month or 2 or 3 months. So just pay attention to the fact that you have enough business analysis processes completed before you start the development itself. Because just a simple example, you did not identify the processes and the needs of your business. You have started working on your new project, and then you figure out that something goes wrong and that you technically are not able to provide enough functionality than needed. And let's say you have hired a team of middle developers who write in PHP and they start creating a platform for you. But then it turns out that for your specific domain tasks, you don't need PHP. You need something like Java. And you don't need middle developers, you need seniors or software architects. And as a result, you will need much more money to do the final refactoring, to do the updates, to do the platform migration, or even to rewrite the platform from the very beginning. And some simple examples can be found from the perspective of server support. Let's say you need to use not the DigitalOcean cloud servers, but AWS with pay-as-you-go system, something like Redshift as the data warehouse, or something like an alternative combination system of data. And you keep losing money because of that. So first of all, again, fintech might seem to be a perfect field and a perfect system, but it needs business analysis to ensure that you are saving money on every single process and every single step of what you do. Until you ensure that, you cannot just keep going in the right way. So technically, this is the main issue. But anyway, we're going to talk also about the specific types of financial organizations. Like fintech is obviously not just about small startups, but about absolutely different companies. So who of them need the business analysis services? What financial organizations are those? First of all, I would like to start with financial institutions. So, technically, these are some large organizations. They have a pretty long history. They might be like 100, 150 years old. And often they rely on a pretty legacy software. And technically, the problem here might be with maintaining this software with some outdated standards. We can face something like the COBOL problem here. The COBOL was a pretty popular software development language back in the 80s. But after that, we are technically don't have any developers at the moment who support it. And even if you find somebody, you will see that this is extremely expensive thing to keep this solution. And moreover, it is not applicable to any new technology standards, etc. And this is a pretty serious problem. So you have to fight with the outdated standards. And in this case, business analysis is necessary to revamp your software completely. And it is important to make it easier for modern companies to use it as well. So some typical improvements for this can be the user-friendly and attractive UI. This can be creating intuitive user experience. This can be re-architecting the software from the very beginning. This can be data migrations to make sure that your software works correctly with the updated system, etc. So summing up, when you work with the business analysis at all, you need to make sure that you are revamping your software in this case, and you are making it useful for those who want to work, for example, on the basis of the mother company or in a little bit more complicated ways. So this is the most important part for the companies with a long history. Obviously, there are still some companies that are earning their money providing some services to the legacy institutions. And these systems work fine. But they work fine until some of the chains in this whole process breaks down and start modernizing. And in this case, we will see that financial institution needs a modernization as well. And until you will see this problem and until you will fix this issue, you will be running the circles round and around until you find the right solution. So this is a perfect example of how business analysis can help the long-storied financial institutions. Another thing to talk about is the financial service companies. Simply saying, I'll be calling them fin servers because telling financial service company is pretty long and boring and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, fin servers usually do not build software by themselves. And for instance, just as an example, many advisors find it more reasonable just to buy some ready solution, like some out-of-the-box solution, or even to use spreadsheets. And for example, let's take a look at how these type of companies can benefit from the business analysis in every single case and how this can be done. Let's say we have the spreadsheet and super old technology. Anyway, lots of financial advisors, wealth tech advisors, and even banks still use this approach. So the idea for these companies might be to engineer software to automate some accounting work or any maybe other routine tasks. So they don't want to use the spreadsheets all the time because that's a pretty complicated thing. And a business analyst in this case, what can he do? He may help the organization figure out how to make it the best case and also how to avoid some expenses and extra features. Let's say, I don't want my analysis tool to have some sort of mobile application. Like, how can you deal with the spreadsheet on your mobile phone? I do have the Google spreadsheets on my iPhone. I hate it. It's horrible to use. And this case is the same. Like, business analyst is the one who's gonna save you from running into the loop of using some absolutely unnecessary features and developing them from scratch. If you don't need the mobile application, he will say you that you don't need it. If you don't need some detailed responsive design, he will say it. Let's talk about another example. For example, you have the purchased software. You bought some sort of the out-of-the-box solution. You thought that it's going to be working perfectly. But first of all, there may be too many accounts and credentials if the company uses, for example, several tools from different providers. Let's say for reporting, you use app A, for forecasting, you use app B, for database analytics, you use app C, etc. And all of them need different credentials. They are all require different support levels, etc. And each for particular tasks, such a system, in this case, just creates a lot of complexity. And in this case, technically, the team may want to create, let's say, a single sign-on application to integrate all the accounts into one place, and moreover, to avoid moving data from one platform to another. Like, you know, this issue when you are trying to connect your new device to your old Google account, and it moves all the data that you have to it. That's the same problem here. Like, you are trying to avoid you are trying to simplify these processes, but at the same time, you may get it harder and more problematic. So single sign-on solution here is something that business analysts could suggest. And as a result, conducting business analysis will also allow the company to enable the secure, but at the same time, user-friendly login or sign-on, and for example, system access based on the role. So technically, one system will combine all the access, all the roles, and will provide an access to all the systems that you have at one place in a pretty easy format. So this seems like something pretty interesting and easy to use, and that's just a simple example of what you can do as the variant of having the purchase software combined with business analytics. Let's talk about the other type of the financial institutions, which is our favorite, fintech startups. Right from the start, the business analyst, first of all, may help entrepreneurs realize if their platform really fixes the pain points of the future users. Because usually, when the founders start working on any platform, they are being trapped by fixing some problems that they experience by themselves, not by the other team. And the job of the business analyst will also be to find the best way to develop the solution at a reasonable cost. Like, what should be done to save the money, not just to suggest some minor UI changes. Usually, startups have enough money to pay for the user analyst or for the user experience developer or for the UI engineer, but they will suggest the things on how to eliminate the real pain points and how to monetize them correctly. And having a soft landing is better than talking a hard fall. And in this case, if the analysis proves the idea is unrealistic or too costly or maybe even non-competitive, entrepreneurs will save money and time for a better try. Maybe they will evolve their product into something else. But this is something that any entrepreneur of the startup has to do. Like, they have to ensure that uh, their idea will take the crash test. And a great team of business analysts is something that you need in this case to make sure that this works correctly. So if you are a startup, make sure that you provide a crash test for your idea before you start even running it. Otherwise, it's not going to make any sense and you will not face any issues at all. Anyway, let's talk about the other thing, which is some like key considerations when you perform the business analysis. In this case, we're going to be talking about some sort of the checklist. Like, let's say you have some specific type of software. We have already spoken about different variants of software, what to do with it, etc. So in this case, I want to provide you some sort of the step-by-step solutions of what to do when you have hired a business analyst, when you have a specific type of the software, and what questions do you need to answer to make sure that you're on the right page here. So, for example, for the legacy software, let's say you are a representative of the company that has a super old software solution. You don't know how to deal with that, and you need some idea of improving that. So first, the analyst needs to define how the system works now and why it works this way. Because obviously, for the legacy software, usually this is experience that lasted for several years even. And in case they cannot provide the right solution how the things may work, that will just not work in the new one as well. So the questions to be answered here are, first of all, what were the business rules in that software at the beginning? What are the new business needs? Company evolves, what should be improved? How would the system better work to match these new needs? Maybe comply with current regulations, maybe being more accessible, maybe face new target audience like teenagers, etc. The other step is, it's pretty essential one, by the way, is to figure out how not to copy the legacy software to the new UI. And moreover, to avoid the existing problems. Because usually when the founders start working on the software thinking they're going to renew it, they'll just end up making a new user interface and that's it. But the problems remain the same and they last for decades until the new user experience analysis happens. So the latter may include redundant and some, for example, overlapping operations or functionalities, and the lack of compliance with the modern requirements as well. So in this case, getting new UI or UX is the only benefit with the problematic old processes and functionality in the background. And it's, being honest, it's too small to be a plus. It's much easier to suggest the whole rework of the app instead of just making some small improvements. So if you have legacy software, somebody just tells you to update the UI and UX, that's not enough. Do a detailed analysis. Finally, it is crucial to work with data because legacy software already has a lot of indispensable data. Like there's just some data sets that have been collected for years and maybe for decades even. And business analyst figures out how to resolve inconsistencies here, maybe some duplications, how to map all the data to the new system, and make sure that nothing vital is lost completely. The other process or the other example, what we can do here is the automating data processing. This can be applicable to any company. This can be legacy software, this can be a new startup, etc. But when you need some automation for the data processing, that is always about saving some money, and you need to make it correctly. So first of all, the analyst has to define the problem and if building software will help at all, because maybe that's not the case. Maybe something else is needed. So the first question here, is it a time-consuming manual data input or not? Because maybe it's not, and there's no need to automate something. Can this data consummation be avoided at all, and what are the ways to avoid it? And finally, maybe it's not even the issue of some inconsistent actions. Maybe it's just ineffective data systematization. And in this case, that's hell of another story. So if manual data input and dozens of spreadsheets are necessary, then in this case, technically building a solution will be of little help, not something completed. And in some of these cases, instruments to synchronize the work of people across the teams might do the trick as well. But anyway, if there is still a need for the software, and if you have identified that the software really needed, then business analyst also analyzes the data the company uses. For example, what kind of data is used? Where does it come from? How should it be presented at all? Where is it used? How should it be stored? And finally, who needs this data and who may have access to which data as well? Following this checklist, technically, you can define the list of functionalities. You can create a backlog of things to be improved. You can prioritize and also determine which functionality to include in the minimal viable product, start the development, test it out, and run the second iteration. Maybe the first version of the software would be enough and that would be fine. But otherwise, that means that you need to update some solutions. And technically, this is what you do in this case. I have a really interesting slide here, which is a little bit outdated because it's taken from the conference in the past year. But anyway, there are some specific business analytics techniques that we use analyzing the product. There are 10 of them. They are not ranked by any prioritization because we use all of them. But anyway, you should at least Google some of those. This is going to be just an overview. But anyways, this is a SWOT analysis. This is a business process modeling when you are identifying the business processes and you're providing the descriptive analysis for them. This is the MOST strategy when you are identifying which features are needed the most. This is just a classical brainstorming, something when the business analyst does it in the internal way. This is non-functional requirement analysis. Like, accept something how the app has to work, you need to also to understand what are the non-functional requirements. For example, you have people with disabilities as your clients, and you are not serving them correctly. What to do in this case? It can be some sort of the pastel analysis, as it's being called. The pastel analysis is technically the process of identifying the steps of avoiding some issues or making them work better. The catwalk analysis, that's a pretty interesting and complicated topic, being honest, and this is about using, for example, user diagrams to identify the steps and processes. These are the user stories. Just a classical thing, but anyway, this helps you to identify your current customer. Requirement analysis, this is similar to the non-functional, but that's about how your app should work and what should it support to work correctly. And finally, the use cases, just identify everything your app does at the moment and finding some weak points of what it cannot do correctly. Let's talk about the other example. It's about starting a fintech company. So let's say you have a new business in your mind and you want to do something new as well. So with startups, we would use a classical variant of business analysis, honestly. Below, I'm going to talk about some sort of the checklist of what can be done and what answers should the business analyst provide to maybe suggest some best changes. Anyway, note that it extends beyond the beginning of development. So it is the first predecessor step you need to take before you start making any code. And business analysis is specifically what is needed in this case. So, first of all, it is needed to identify the objectives, what your company is going to do. Second, analyze the idea market proposition. Are there competitors? Is there something that markets suggest already? Maybe there are some alternative solutions that they have. Identify competitors, just as I said. Put together some compliance and maybe industry requirements. Maybe this industry is strictly regulated by some governmental issues or governmental organizations. Maybe there's something to be changed. Identify the stakeholders and their needs. Who's going to be in charge of your product? Who's going to help you and who's going to be standing behind you as well? Think of problems that may arise when the software is created and marketed. Okay, you did the development, you did the launch, you did the first sales. What's going to be next? Maybe your customers might start losing the data. Maybe some alternative issues will happen, nobody knows. Define the MVP scope and make sure it is not growing exponentially. So let's say your scope of the initial application is growing dramatically, and you've been aiming at the price of $100,000, but then it turns into 1 million. How did this happen, and how to prevent this from happening? This is exactly what you need to answer to when you are starting the company. Clarify the document requirements. What are the legal perspectives? What should be documented to ensure you can switch the development teams easily and they will not be starting from scratch? What should be your internal documentation inside the team? Finally, help developers to understand their requirements. You have identified some steps to be done. You have defined what to do next. You need to make sure your developers understand what to do as well. And finally, ensure that deliverables correspond with the requirements, because this is something pretty important. And this is exactly the end of the project, when you ensure that your development finalized correctly. And also, here's a pretty interesting thing, which is called an outside perspective. This is the way to take a look from the outer space at your company. Because currently, maybe you're listening to this webinar and you're saying like, okay, I'm gonna hire some business analysts, I'm gonna make somebody a business analyst for my company from inside the staff. Well, the problem is that it doesn't work in that way. Very often, the company's vision is a bit of kilter and not quite what it will work for them. They just get used to this vision, and this is a serious problem. And moreover, it might remain the blind spot until the company is ready for an outside perspective. So make sure you are ready for that mentally. And in this case, the business analysts and tech experts analyze the existing solution, they analyze the requirements for changes to provide the external client with the detailed plan for achieving their needs in the best way possible. This is the main idea. This is why you need an external company. And here's an example. We do the business analysis and as our trial service. If you want to try working with us, you can just order the business analysis as the trial service at insert.com, and we will be happy to help. And here's what you're going to achieve here. So first of all, you're going to be able to create precisely the product or service that users need, like out of your perspective, but what the users really need. We can help you develop a fully fledged solution at a reasonable cost. Again, we are trying to make you avoid this situation where you are spending 1 million instead of 100,000. Make the solution easy to use and maintain. Sometimes when the initial application is being developed, it is understandable only for the authors. That's the bad practice, and this is something never to be done. But at the same time, we help make your product scalable, because one day you will get your first 1,000 clients. The other day you will get 10,000 clients. The other day it's going to be 1 million. And you need to make sure that you are corresponding to that amount of clients correctly. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to face that in the way that you want to. Anyway, just to sum up all that we have talked about so far, I want to say that the business analysis, as you have probably endured, is extremely important for anything, but mostly it is about saving your money. And such a thing as saving money is always a great thing to do with the professionals of this thing. Our company, as I've already said, is happy to help you with that. And again, this is a trial service. It lasts for something like 1 or 2 months. So if you are ready to take a try and try to analyze how the things work, we're happy to help anytime. Just follow the link in the description, open up the insert.com, find the contact us, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have. Anyway, this is it for today's webinar. I hope it was pretty helpful for you. In case you have any questions, feel free to reach out in comments. Me and our team will be happy to answer to you. And I really appreciate you joining today. I hope, again, as I've said, this was helpful to you. And don't forget that we have the webinars on a daily basis. Every day we provide some webinars on the different absolutely aspects, from the data analysis and up to the fintech development and the causes of recession and main economics. So don't forget to check out our channel, like this video if you really like it. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you pretty soon. Thank you for your time.